First, I'd like to introduce State Representative Mike Foley, representing the 14th Ohio House District, which includes Parma Heights, Brook Park, and some of the west and west side of Cleveland. He's a sponsor of House Bill 138, which expands authority of all counties to access money in the DTAC fund, and also House Bill 138. That's 388 and House Bill 138, which expedites return of vacant properties to productive use. It's one of the tools that we're advocating. Representative Foley. And then also Representative Blessing, who represents the northwest part of Hamilton County, and is also a co-sponsor of House Bill 138. They'll both speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Olivia. As Olivia said, my name is Mike Foley. I'm the state rep from the Cleveland area. This is Representative Lou Blessing from the Cincinnati area. And I want to thank Rebuild Ohio for putting together this proposal and doing this work. About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when I was first sworn in to work at the legislature, there was a number of city council people in my city, Cleveland, Ohio, came to me and said, look, we've got a whole big problem, and you know, this has become common knowledge. You drive down streets and there's vacant and abandoned and boarded up housing, and sometimes they're not boarded up. There's housing all over the city of Cleveland, and while some of this stuff we know who owns it, there's a lot of this property we don't know who owns it, and it's just kind of sitting there, and it's causing conniptions for both ourselves as councilmen who have to answer these phone calls all the time from angry neighbors, but also our development corporations, the city housing inspectors, the tax collectors who need to collect real property taxes, and the guys who have to go and mow the lawn when no one else does it, or keep the properties boarded up. So it's nice that this research is available to us, because from our perspective, this, at least in my perspective in Cleveland, this was kind of common knowledge, and as we talked to Lou Blessing and Representative Steve Driehaus is in the back, this was certainly their perspective of what's going on in Cincinnati, and as we talked a little bit more with other legislators in the State House, this was going on all over the state of Ohio. So I'm really appreciative of the work you've done. Lou and I have been working on a bill which would basically make sure we know who owns property after a foreclosure happens, House Bill 138, so that right now one of the problems is that when a foreclosure occurs, the lending institution that does the foreclosure gets the deed and then never files it with the recorder's office, so we never know who owns the property. So we've been working on a bill, and we think it's got a good chance of getting out of the Senate in the next month or so, that would basically say, file these deeds. Sheriff, since you create these deeds, file these deeds so we know who owns the property, so we can go after and collect the taxes, and know who to charge for cutting the grass, and the angry neighbors who call the councilman will now be able to tell them, all right, this is the guy who owns it, this is the guy you need to call about getting the grass cut and keeping the place boarded up and making sure that the vandals aren't around. So, as I said, we really appreciate the work you've done, and I'll turn it over to Lou.
Thanks for the invitation. I want to personally thank Mike for introducing this bill. It's a great idea and a great bill, and he's put a lot of time into it. This issue is non-partisan, believe me. Mike's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. And it's a work in progress. We worked hard on this bill to make sure that we got it done quickly, because this crisis is an emergency. But as we were working on it, we get more and more ideas, and things come in. I'll just give you two. At the beginning of this talk, it was mentioned that vandals go in, rip out the copper, and the buildings are worthless. We get cases where, and I do criminal defense, the police would arrest these folks, and they couldn't prosecute because the owner's not going to come over from Germany or wherever. So I think one of the things we ought to do, Mike, is put a criminal section in there that makes it a crime to vandalize abandoned property. That way you wouldn't need to bring the owner in. It might help a little bit. The other issue that came up, in my practice, I represent one of the people that was foreclosed on. As a matter of course, the financial institutions and others have the people leave. And when people get the foreclosure notice, they think they have to leave. In fact, it's in the financial institution's best interest to have the people stay, because the properties won't be vacant then. They'll be maintained. Things will happen. We need to get it through the financial institution's head that that's a good idea. And And just talking to a few people last week, it seems one of the things they're concerned with is if they let the people stay, they'll be subject to the Landlord Tenant Act. I understand their concern there. That's a pretty tough act, but I think Mike and I together can work on some things that make it work so that the banks allow the people to stay. Frankly, it takes so long now for foreclosure. If they would stay long enough, they might build enough cash and equity up to re-up at a reasonable rate with financial institutions, and they never become vacant. So the idea here is prevention. Again, I want to thank you for the invitation. Mike, for your work on this, you've done a great job.
Thank you very much. We do want to thank Representative Driehaus, who worked on the foreclosure task force for many months and put together a number of recommendations for the governor. And, we think we think there's some energy and some good minds around this at the State House and on both sides of the aisle to work on this.
Anybody has any other ideas? We're open. It's a work in progress.
Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Foley and Representative Blessing. I want to pick up on a theme that they mentioned, that this really is a nonpartisan issue, and Senator Stivers was scheduled to be here today, and he had an unexpected family emergency. He represents the district here in Central Ohio, and he has sponsored legislative reform to address multiple abandoned housing and vacant property bills, including Senate Bill 277 and 119. So we're pleased that he's also supportive, and I'm glad that Representative Driehaus was recognized as well.